I can't believe someone did this. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. A couple of days ago, David sent me an email with the title Weird Table. No other context, just a link. So I was thinking, okay, it's probably one of those Les Paul table things. Or maybe somebody's homemade creation of a Gibson headstock. Or perhaps one of those Fender headstocks. Nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to see. It's a Gibson Les Paul Custom Black Beauty guitar table. Basically just like some sort of a workbench somebody had custom made that they could put their guitar in, kind of like as a display case, right? Sadly, the plexiglass is really yellowed with age, so it's not much of a display anymore. But no, that's not what this is at all. This is a Les Paul Custom, encapsulated in rosin. Just so you fully understand, here's Taranti's video encapsulating a little dog pendant. You mix it up, you start to pour some, and then you place the object that you want in it. In this case, a dog, and then you pour it over top. And then eventually you'll get a completed product that looks something similar to this. So now, imagine that process with a straight up Gibson Les Paul Custom. It's forever encapsulated like some sort of a fossil. Why? Why would somebody do this? It had to have been a good guitar, right? Well, if we come over to our description over here, apparently this is a famous table at an old St. Paul guitar shop called Pete's Guitar. So maybe some local peeps know all about this thing and it's got its own history. This is the first time I've ever seen it. But according to the seller, this was done by Pete around 1980. And he's got this whole cool collection. He wanted to preserve an old one forever. And the seller is assuming this guitar is from the 60s. So let's do a little bit of investigation here. What year is this? Because unfortunately, we can't just flip it over to look at the backside of the headstock. And it appears that they actually put a backing on this one. So it doesn't seem that taking it out of the table and viewing it from the back is going to help us at all either. So first off, we can buck that it's a 60s Les Paul Custom because A, that would leave your options down to 1960, 1961, or pretty much 68 or 69. However, this has a Nashville-style bridge, so we know it has to be, at the earliest, a 1975, unless somebody's modified things at some point. So we'll have to keep an open mind there. If we look to the knobs, it appears we might have two different stylings. One could be a top hat, the other three appear to be some sort of a speed knob. So that could make sense for like a 60, 61. So a 1960 or 61 Les Paul Custom would look something like this. It would have three humbuckers, but it could have the reflector knobs, like we're seeing right here, and maybe these were just replaced. However, this one's two pickups. They did exist back then, but that would be very, very rare. I don't think Mr. Pete over here would be encapsulating a 1960. So now let's look at one later in that decade. These guys shipped with the witch hat knobs, but you do primarily find them in two pickup variations. So since we don't have any of that and the Nashville-style bridge, that puts us somewhere in the 70s. Speed knobs start to become super popular around 1978. That's when they come back. Because all throughout the early 70s, it was the witch hats. And then primarily 1976 and 77 switch over to the reflectors. But then 78 into 79, they start to transition into the speed knobs. So far, just based on the seller story, the bridge, and the knobs, we can pretty well narrow it down to it's probably a 78, 79, or 1980. That is, if the author is telling us the truth. It could be a more modern day custom. Another great way to identify it would be to take out the pickups, but unfortunately, that is not an option. So now let's look at the headstock. Okay, yeah, this is definitely late 70s, early 80s style. They just have a certain look to the headstock, so that also tells us it's not one of the 60s ones, because they have a very distinct look to them. Also check out things like your truss rod cover. Other things to consider are the tuners. We can see the large washers around here, and these look like the Gibson M6 Schallers. That also tells us 1975 or later. Now it's a bit hard to see here, but it does not look like it has the bone nut, so this was likely a Nashville-made custom. So that's another thing that tells us 1975 or later. But unfortunately, that is as far as we can go. So most likely a 79 or 80 Les Paul Custom is encapsulated in this rosin. Now we get to figure out how much the seller is asking for this thing. $2,000. Is that an absolute crazy, laughable price that nobody would ever consider paying? Or is it a good deal? Well, let's consider our options here. Let's go to Reverb real quick and check out 1980 Les Paul Customs. Looks like you can get one here for $55. Silverburst definitely sees a premium, but maybe not quite that much of a premium. We've got some 2550s at decent prices, but we are looking for a black custom. Here we go. 7500 by Music Age. I mean, this one looks like it has actually really clean. And the gold's not even worn on this one. That's funny. One that hasn't been encapsulated is in better condition than the encapsulated one. But here's those tuners we were talking about and the style of serial number that you would likely see. Okay, this one's got a neck ding. But if you come over here, you can see the gold is quite tarnished on this one, especially on the bridge. So this thing had to have been played extensively. Or this date is wrong. Maybe it was like the mid-80s when he encapsulated it. You can even see some rust going on along here, but maybe that's just a reaction to the pour. But anyways, if you wanted to buy one of these today without haggling, it's $7,500. But that one has sat on the market for 2 years, so that likely tells us it's probably a $4,000 to $6,000 guitar, realistically. The point I'm trying to illustrate is it's easily at least half off here, and you get a table with it. So is this actually a deal for someone? I don't know, because I'm kind of conflicted about this. Yes, it has a vintage Les Paul custom in it, but it cannot be used as intended. But there's still something inherently cool about it being in there. Do I share this with people, or do I hoard it hoping that they drop the price one day and I can go pick it up for $500? It's in St. Paul, Minnesota, if anybody's interested. Because I'm sure the first thing in everyone's mind is, can you take it out? Is there profit to be made here? The seller says it would be impossible to remove. And you know what? I bet there is somebody that could do it. It wouldn't be a pretty process, but they could at least, cut it out. Get it a little bit closer, do some really fine sanding. You might still have like a layer around it, but maybe, just maybe, you could free it from its prison. But realistically, your tuners are probably ruined because the gears will be seized up. I doubt your pickups would still work because that's going to be all within the wiring. Because remember, it was all liquid. It's going to penetrate everything. However, maybe it would act just like wax bonding the pickups, so maybe you'd get lucky, I don't know. But regardless, your pots are going to be completely frozen. There's no way your truss rod's going to function because that's going to be completely seized. And then hypothetically, you do all this and it does still miraculously work somehow. But then you find out why it was encapsulated. It was a stolen guitar with a scratched out serial number, or it was a factory second, or a bargain, or there was already like a really bad headstock crack on the back that just could not be fixed at that point in time. And now you're tasked with trying to take the rosin out of it and then fix it properly. There's gotta be more of a story behind this particular guitar. However, if you were hoping this was a Gibson or a made in Japan replica of the 70s, 80s, unfortunately no, I can 100% guarantee you this is an authentic Gibson Les Paul custom from the late 70s. There's no doubt in my mind somebody actually did this. So looking at this as some sort of a display, a piece of artwork for $2,000 that has a $4,000 Les Paul custom in it, that still kind of sounds intriguing, but it is just aged horribly. Like if it was clear like our puppy dog, I bet this thing was quite awesome back in the day. Unfortunately, the pour wasn't done that well. There's a lot of air pockets, like you can see right here inside the knob, pretty much all over this particular knob. And you've got all this, you've got a big crack in it. It's really hazy and it's yellowed so much. Sadly, I just don't find it all that attractive anymore, but if it was perfectly clear, I could see the appeal of doing something like this. But the seller suggests that it could continue to be used as a table or mount it to a wall, which I could see that being pretty cool if you mount it up to a wall. Maybe there's a way to clear it up, I'm not sure. At the very least, it's an expensive conversation starter. So there you go, 78, 79, or 80 Les Paul Custom, encapsulated in rosin. I hate it, but I love it at the same time. I think it'd be cool as like you put it in the floor and it's like your welcome mat if it truly cannot be freed somehow. But I'd love to hear about your guys' thoughts and opinions down in the comments, especially if you have any experience freeing things from rosin. I'd imagine it'd be pretty heavy to ship, but the seller is not interested in any of that process. You have to be able to pick it up. Alright, Troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed. Do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care.